You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. We're a little bit late tonight getting on the air. Apologize for that. But in any case, we're here. We're live. It's Wednesday, November the 9th, 2022. If you're watching us any other time, you're watching a rerun. But, I want to send out a couple of thank yous tonight before we get into the night's topic. Had a nice chat with Doug Pickett after last week's show. In fact, Doug just sent me a text. He's tuning in, so hi, Doug. But we had a good show last week, I thought, and I've certainly learned things I didn't know about Scotland Neck. And after last week's show, Doug sent me a couple of notes about some of the things that we talked about. So I just want to quickly mention those. If you remember last week, we talked about a theater there. It was the Dixie Theater. Doug said it was originally called the Madry Opry House. It was built in the very early 1900s. If you remember also, we showed a picture of a Confederate warship called the Ram Albemarle. And Doug said it was actually built at a site near the Roanoke River. I didn't realize that. And there was also a pencil drawing of an old school there. And Doug says that was actually drawn by a local artist by the name of Wilma Fulkerson. And I've had a couple folks ask about the train tracks. Like myself, a lot of folks didn't realize that there used to be train tracks there in very close proximity to Scotland Neck. And there was, in fact, a depot there, a train depot station there. And so apparently those tracks were removed somewhere around 1984, Doug says. And so I'm sure some of the viewers are old enough to remember when there were railroad tracks in Scotland Neck. I went through there a few times as a child and young adult, but I can't say I ever remember railroad tracks being there. So anyway, and lastly, there's a couple more items too. He mentioned that the hotel was located on the corner across the street from the Scotland Neck Bank. If you remember that bank, that's the one I said reminded me an awful lot of May and Gorham Drugstore, 5 Points here in Rocky Mountain. In fact, it was the bank in Scotland Neck there. But the hotel was across the corner from the bank. If you're familiar with Scotland Neck, I don't know where that bank is. Across the corner from that was where the hotel was. Finally, he says that Hurricane Hazel came through in '54, of course. That was something else I didn't realize, that Hazel had it came inland and then, of course, went across that area up there, and it wiped out the drive-in theater that was a mile north of Scotland Neck, but also there was a drive-in theater at Hobgood. And Hazel took that out as well. So she did quite a bit of damage, not only in this area, but certainly north and east of here, too. So thanks, Doug, for that information. Doug and I are trying to get a trip together, too, to visit the crash site of that A4 Skyhawk that went down in 1963 just outside of Scotland Neck. And I want to see that for sure. And I also want to go to the Scout Pond. I didn't know anything about that, obviously, it was well before my time. But the fact that pond was dug by Boy Scouts and dug by hand with no heavy equipment, basically shovels and wheelbarrows and pickaxes, and to see what they accomplished there, it's just really amazing. And it's a testament to the work ethic and the leadership of the people who were in charge of getting those young guys out there to do that work under what can only be imaginable as arduous, dirty work, back-breaking at times, I'm sure. But a lot of people got a lot of enjoyment out of that Scout Pond for many, many years. And it's a shame that it had to go by the wayside, as so many things do. But in any case, that's what happened. But it's a good story there, and I'm looking forward to get up there and visiting the site of that crash at A4 and hopefully the Scout Pond too. So we're shooting for sometime in January. I'll let you know how that comes together. So, okay, I also want to send some thanks out tonight. After the show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Miss Maywood's Bell. I had a caller call in, Miss Norma Brown, and left a voicemail. And basically what she said was that she was a friend of Miss Bell's, and she was the one that, in fact, informed me where Miss Bell was. And so I didn't get a chance to visit Miss Bell this week. I certainly hoped to, but work just got in the way and I couldn't. But I had a very nice talk this morning, in fact, with Norma Brown. She had left her phone number and her voicemail, so I called her this morning. And we spoke for, several minutes about Miss May Woods Bell and about her life. And so I wanted to clarify something that I said. I perhaps may have misinterpreted something that Miss Bell had said. And so I wanted to clarify that tonight. And, when I went to see her, my son and I, as I said last week and week before last too, we went to see her, and she was a little frail. We kind of called her, I guess you'd say on an off day. She was asleep, in fact, when we got there. And so I guess a little groggy, a little out of it, for lack of a better term. But, I left there kind of, and I think I said this on the show last week, I left there, a little saddened that I kind of had the idea or the impression that she was, for lack of a better term, ready to die. And what I realized after talking with Miss Norma Brown this morning is that nothing could be further from the truth. May Woods Bell is not ready to die. She is certainly very much still living, very much alive. In fact, Miss Brown says that periodically she'll call her on a Saturday and say, "Look, would you like to go to church tomorrow?" And if she says yes, then Miss Brown will go pick her up. They'll go to church together. And they go out to eat after church, and sometimes it's 3 or 4 hour long process between church and going out to eat, and before she gets back to her little room there at the nursing home. So, I got thinking about it, and I said the last thing I want to do was give the impression that anyone is got one foot on the banana peel, the other in a grave. So I wanted just to correct that. I want to go see Miss Bell again, and I certainly hope to do that this week. We did get a video of the show from October 26th, was a show we did primarily about her. And so I've got it on DVD now, and I think she'd like to see that show. In fact, she expressed interest with Miss Brown about seeing the show. So we're going to try to set up a time where we can get with her and let her see the show. But one of the things that I realized, even though the friends and associates that May Woods Bell had in her younger years have long since passed on, she still has a lot of friends. She was very active in the church her entire life. As I said, she still attends church, possibly not every Sunday, but she certainly does attend when she can, when she feels up to it. And so she has friends at church. Certainly Miss Brown, I can tell, is a good friend. And so, you're never too old to make new friends. And so anyway, I'd encourage anyone who knew Miss May Woods Bell, if you'd like to go see her, I'm sure she'd really love to see anyone from the past days of the museum. If you were a child, and as I did many times, and share stories with her, I'm sure she'd welcome you in with open arms. So anyway, lastly, I wanted to say thank you to Gene Herring. I don't know if Gene watches the show, but I'm on Facebook every day, and a lot of times I'm researching topics for the show. Sometimes I've got a hobby, if you will, of just kind of putting my opinion out there about a lot of different things, from politics to, just life in general. And so I enjoy Facebook. It's kind of it's a escape, if you will, it's entertainment for me. And I write as a hobby anyway. But Gene Herring quite often puts some very interesting information out there, pictures, articles. I think he must have a subscription to the newspapers.com website too, because I see some of the same things in some of his posts that I run across during my research for the show. And so part of tonight's show I owe directly to Gene Herring, because he put a couple of pictures up of a building that I honestly did not remember until I got to looking and doing some research. And we're going to show you some pictures here in just a moment of what at one time was referred to as Merchants Notion and Company. Some of you may remember this building. It was over on Nash Street. It actually faced Nash Street. It was literally in the parking lot, the current day parking lot for the Station Square Mall, across from City Hall, across Church Street over there. So when I got to digging into that and that building and what was there in that building over the years, because it was several businesses that occupied that building at one time or another. And then I ran across a man that I used to know, who's long since passed away, Mr. Lionel Bynum. And there was a connection to Mr. Bynum with this building, and of course Station Square Mall. We'll get into all that in a minute. But anyway, I don't always think to issue thanks for these people who send me ideas for a show. And in Gene's case, I literally stumbled across these pictures while looking at Facebook and saw the pictures he had posted. And I said, that's a neat idea for the show. So we're going to talk about some of the pictures tonight that Gene Herring put on Rocky Mount Way Back When Facebook page. Okay, so without further ado, Lee, if you would, put up item number 1. This is a picture from the 1940s that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, and it is a picture of the Merchant and Notion Company building. A lot of history. This building was built in 1932, I think it was. At the time, it was literally tied with People's Bank for being the tallest building in Rocky Mount. Those two were each 5 stories, and so it was obviously a big building. A lot of space here. I'm not sure how many square feet within this building, but it was the Merchant Notion and Company was commonly referred to as a dry goods company. I guess by that they sold mostly household items, certainly some clothing, I'm sure. I'm not sure they didn't sell any food, though if they did, it was probably, flour, sugar, those kind of things. I doubt there's any fresh vegetables or meat, for example, in this dry goods operation. But over the years, there was a lot of changing hands and a lot of different businesses that ended up taking space in this building. And so it was a neat trip down history lane, if you will, to go back and look at this area and particularly the occupants of this building. So this picture was taken sometime around the 1940s. I've got another picture. Lee, if you would put up item number 2, this is also from the 1940s. It's a much better quality picture. So there to your right in the background, you see it says Hanes, the National Underwear, and under that it says Merchants Notion Company. They became the Hanes representative or distributor, if you will, for this area. And so, and you see in the foreground there, that is the Atlantic, I think it was called Atlantic Service Station, excuse me. And again, this was, and over to your left, that's the old Firestone building there, where Firestone used to be, on the corner of Church Street and Nash Street. But the Merchants Notion Company actually faced Nash Street. And so, I spoke with Eric Dawson this week about this building too, and Eric was telling me that just beyond this, headed toward the railroad tracks down Nash Street, there was an alleyway that ran back over toward the old Belt Tyler Honda shop back over in there, and behind, I guess, Towel Town too. So anyway, that was the general area of where all this was. But this is one of the better quality photographs that I've seen to be as old as it is. This came straight out of Rocky Mount Telegram from, it didn't have a date, I'm guessing, by the cars in the truck there, sometime in the 1940s. But it's a really good quality photograph. Usually when you get back this far, the quality is not too good, but this one was exceptionally good. So, okay, item number 3, if you would, Lee. And this is an ad that appeared to kind of give you a little better idea about what the Merchants Notion Company was all about. And you see there a big tall building in the background. That is the Merchants Notion Company. And it says, serving the merchants of Eastern North Carolina, Virginia with dry goods and notions since 1913. Merchants Notion Company, wholesale only, it says, 131 Nash Street. So, typically, when a business advertised that they were wholesale only, that meant you had to have some kind of license, business license, in order to go in there and buy from them. You couldn't just walk off the street, for example, and buy. So they would typically sell in bulk, in quantity, to other merchants, other businesses around town or in within a certain geographic range. But this was certainly a major operation. I mean, a 5-story building. They had the whole building at this time. And so that tells you right there that for them to have this size building, they had a pretty broad footprint in Eastern North Carolina. It's safe to say they it says Eastern North Carolina and Virginia. So that tells you right there that they ship product all over and for many years had a very good business. But the business did go through changes. The very next year, August of 1945, literally a year after this ad appeared, there was another ad. If you would, Lee, item number 4, And the picture itself looks very similar, almost the same angle. It's a little grainy, as I said. When you get back into 30s and 40s and find these pictures, typically they're not very good quality. They've been digitized, of course, and sometimes that process doesn't bode very well for the way the picture comes out. But you do see there, it says since 1913. Now, the business originally was on Sunset Avenue, this Merchants in Notion company. And then in later years, they moved around to Main Street, right around the corner from Nash Street. They occupied a space there for several years. And then in 1932, I believe it was, they built this building and moved in here. And so obviously they had grown from the time they opened up initially in 1913 until the time they built this building some 20 odd years later. And by the 1940s, they were booming. I mean, this was obviously a big business in Rocky Mount, employed a lot of people, and it was a lot going on there. In fact, I saw where they were incorporated on 2 different occasions, the same business, which is kind of unusual. Item number 5, Lee, if you would, for us, please. And this is, actually, I think this is the second time they were incorporated. I'm just going to read this real short article here. It says, the Merchants Notion Company of Rocky Mount today filed a certificate of incorporation in the Office of the Secretary of State in Raleigh, according to information received here. The company, which deals in notion and dry goods of every description, has been in operation under the present firm title since 1931. At that time, the company changed ownership from a similar business maintained by Alcock and Henry. Now, if you remember, we talked about this Alcock and Henry on a previous show here some months ago. So Alcock and Henry actually started this business, and then it became Merchants Notion in later years. So it says during the following 13 years until 1943, when it was changed into a partnership between J.D. Blunt, L.B. Morris, and J.H. Cuserill Jr., the business was operated as a corporation. The filing of the certificate today by the concern marks the reincorporation of the company. Authorized capital stock of the business is $150,000. Stock subscribed by Blunt, Morris, and Cuserill is $300,000 each. J.P. Bond, local lawyer, is the attorney in charge of the transaction. So one thing I wanted to point out to you here amongst all these others is Cuserill. I saw his first name earlier, I lost it now. But anyway, here we go, J.H. Cuserill. He was one of the principals that were partners in this business in the very early days. Okay, so business continued to grow and expand, as was the case. Rocky Mount has gone through several periods of rapid growth and rapid expansion, certainly in the business community. We've talked about these little spurts in business before. The 1960s, Rocky Mount experienced a boom of grand openings almost every month for a solid year. There were new businesses opening, new businesses coming to town. And so in the 1940s and early 1950s, there was a similar boom that was happening here. Part of that was due to the war being over with, World War II being over with, and troops coming back home. They had a little money to spend. And so business was flourishing in Rocky Mount in the early 1950s. So anyway, item number 6, Lee, if we could. And item number 6 is an advertisement from the Rocky Mount Dry Goods Company congratulating MC Brazel Company in Battleboro. And it says, congratulations to MC Brazel on your new modern home in which to serve the people of this area better. And of course, down below you see the address 131 Nash Street. That is the address of the Rocky Mount Dry Goods Company. So by 1953, Merchants Notion Company has become Rocky Mount Dry Goods Company. So, and again, there's some owners here, some partners in the business, and we'll get back to those partners in a minute, but certainly things are still booming. The business is still growing. And if I'm not mistaken, this congratulations here to MC Brazel is when they moved into that nice glass-faced building over on Main Street in Battleboro. I'm not sure where they were prior to that, but I think this 1953 is probably about the time that this happened. And this is where, by the time I was old enough to know anything about MC Brazel, that's where they were. So where they were prior to that, I have no earthly idea. And I just realized we have actually blown by our first commercial break point. So Lee, if you would bring it back to me. We're going to take a quick break, folks. Get a word from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Rocky Mount Dry Goods Company that was previously Owl, Coke and Henry, and then later was Rocky Mount Merchants. It was Merchants Notion. So again, there was 2 or 3 evolutions of the business and the building. We'll talk more about that when we come back from the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitation and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And we're back. And we're back. We're back. During the break, I had a caller call in that said her brother worked for this company, the Rocky Mount Dry Goods, that was previously Merchants Notion, and prior to that, it was Owl, Coke and Henry. I think the caller said her brother was Dennis Culpepper, had worked there some 40-odd years. So a lot of folks had a very long time working with this company through its transition and various owners and so forth. So I appreciate the call, callers. Nice talking with you. As I said, this business went through several evolutions over the years, and several partners were owners and so forth in it. May of 1967, the following ad, Lee, if you would put up item number 7 for our viewers. This ad appeared May of 1967, and you'll notice there it says, hear ye, Rocky Mount is 100 years old, let's all celebrate. So this was in conjunction with the Rocky Mount Centennial celebration that was going on in 1967. And so this was a really nice ad that Rocky Mount Dry Goods put in the Rocky Mount Telegram. And it said, we are justly proud to be a part of Progressive Rocky Mount, serving the people of Rocky Mount in eastern North Carolina for 54 years. Centennial Week is May 20th through 27th. Rocky Mount Dry Goods, wholesale distributor for Hanes underwear. If you can't see on your screen, this is from the very, very bottom in very tiny writing, but it says wholesale distributor for Hanes underwear, sportswear, pajamas, and hosiery, Converse, canvas, and rubber footwear. I used to wear Converse school tennis shoes to school every year. They were my favorite shoes. They kind of fell out of vogue for many, many years, and now they've come back. Now if you got a pair of Converse shoes, you're in the clique, so to speak. And so that's kind of neat, but I didn't realize that this company that started out being a dry goods company eventually would become a Hanes distributor and a Hanes dealer, and in fact end up selling Converse tennis shoes and Hanes underwear, pajamas, t-shirts, and so forth. So again, it's a neat evolution of how this company came from its humble beginnings back in 1913 up through the 1960s and beyond. One of the things that I that I found during my research was that the ownership of the building itself changed, of course, with different owners. But I also ran across, I mentioned at the top of the show, I ran across the name Lionel Bynum. When I first got out of the military back in 1986, I went to work for Standard Electronics, which was one of the many companies that Mr. Bynum headed up. It was kind of a subsection, if you will, of Standard Electric. And at that time, Standard Electric, in addition to being an electrical contractor, was also putting in burglar alarms and fire alarms and that kind of stuff. And then they decided to branch off with another company and call it Standard Electronics. And they were going with a newer, more modern type of equipment, putting in more modern security systems, fire alarms and so forth. And so that was my first job out of the military when I got out of service in 1986. I went to work for Standard Electronics as an installer, putting in these newfangled, at least at the time, newfangled security systems. So anyway, when I saw Mr. Bynum's name mentioned, I said, well, you know, that's a gentleman that I knew a little bit about, but I knew that he had been instrumental in Rocky Mount's development over many, many years, so I thought it'd be neat to kind of do a little research on him and how he came into this whole picture with that building. And so we're going to start tying all that together now. So Lee, if you would, put up item number 8. Item number 8, this picture appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in May of 1951. And it's kind of hard to see on your screen there, I know, but that's a picture of the employees of Standard Electric in May of 1951. And the headlines you see there, it says, Standard Electric is proud of its service organization, the best trained, most dependable, and largest service department in Rocky Mount. At your service with 32 men and 13 trucks. Now in 1951, amongst those 32 men who were part of Standard Electric's service organization was a gentleman by the name of Lionel Bynum. In fact, Lionel Bynum is kneeling. Can you zoom in on that picture itself? If you can get zoom in, and just so we can look and focus on the workers themselves there in the center of this advertisement, there's a great many of them standing, and then there's some that are kneeling. And of the ones that are kneeling, Mr. Lionel Bynum is the 8th one from the left. And so I'm not sure how clear it'll get if you try to zoom in. It may get a little bit blurry. If it does, don't worry about it. There you go. I circled him before I came to the station. I ran this in my computer and put a yellow circle. So the yellow circle is surrounding Mr. Lionel Bynum. In 1951, as I said, he was an employee of Standard Electric. And he came to work with Standard in 1946. He actually was from another, I forgot, outside of Rocky Mount, not terribly far, but I want to say somewhere in the eastern part of the state. But anyway, he came to Rocky Mount in 1946 and went to work for Standard Electric. By 1951, he was with this group here, and Standard had kind of built a reputation. In addition to doing electrical contracting work, listen to this list. These are some things that Standard Electric at this time in 1951 was factory approved to service for. Frigidaire commercial water coolers, beverage coolers, milk coolers, reach-in refrigerators, meat display cases, delicatessen cases, dairy display cases, vegetable display cases, ice cream cabinets, frozen food cases, ice makers, cooling coils, ice making coils, meter miser compressors, reciprocating compressors, evaporating condensers, store air conditioning, office window air conditioners, control system air conditioners. They were also capable and skilled to work on frozen food cases, meat cases, vegetable cases, the list goes on and on and on. Beer coolers, walk-in coolers, floorless refrigerators, even oil furnaces, oil burners, stokers, window fans. I mean, they had very detailed training for all their employees, and so Standard Electric developed a reputation of being a company you could call to work on just about anything in your house that had any kind of electricity going through it. And that served them well over the years. Okay, fast forward if we could to 1970. We're going to jump forward 20 years here now, because, and we'll tie all this together as we go along. But Lee, put up item number 9. And This article appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in November of 1971. And you're seeing two gentlemen there. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call first. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Good, Harold. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fine. Just struck an interesting note when you started talking about the business that you're talking about tonight. My dad had a country store out on 58, as you probably know.
Yes, sir.
And in the 50s, you know, he had salesmen from this company to call on him, and he sold a lot of khaki pants, work clothes, underwear, etc. At the store. But in the 50s, I recall picking up whatever he might need, you know, from there at different times. And there was a gentleman named Dick Daniels who was a salesperson there.
Okay.
He was the brother to Charlie Daniels over the Y.
Yeah.
And I didn't know Mr. Cutrell back in those earlier days. He later served on the trustees at Nash Community, and along with Dottie, and she got to know him. And my Uncle Horace, who was a fishing buddy of his, enjoyed a few years with Lionel. And of all the people in Rocky Mount, I've always heard that he was one of the nicest people or persons that you could know in Rocky Mount. So he had quite a reputation. And later, I think this Standard company sort of evolved to the Lowe's, as we talked about one time before.
Right.
And you showed some pictures about the Lowe's store later days. But I do remember the history that you're talking about tonight, and I wasn't quite sure where you were going in the beginning, but I do remember this building and this store being quite a part of my early days.
Yeah, a lot of history there. Sure is.
As you said, Converse had that popularity in the, I guess, late 40s, but certainly in the 50s. All the basketball people back in those days wore Converse.
Yes, sir.
As you said, and it later became, you know, Harris Cutrell.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Rocky Mount Dry Goods, I believe, in the days in the 50s when Dick Daniels was a salesman there for years.
Yeah, that would be right. Yes, sir. You're correct.
But you've got an interesting subject tonight, and I'm sure I'm interrupted you in the middle, so I'm waiting to hear the rest of it.
Okay. Good to hear from you, Harold. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Randy.
All righty. Bye-bye. Yeah, there's a lot of loose ends here, and that's when I got to researching this story tonight, I said, wow, well, I need to talk about that. And I said, I need to talk about that too, so I'm going to try to tie all this together. So what you're seeing on your screen there now, this article appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in November of 1971. And it says, Harris Cutrell Incorporated has a long history since 1912. And it says, when the firm of Harris Cutrell Incorporated changed its name from Rocky Mount Dry Goods and moved to North Church Street. So now this is the fourth name this company has had. If you remember, it started out Al Coke and Cook, I think it was, and then Merchant, Notion, and whatever else it was, and then Rocky Mount Dry Goods, and then it became Harris Cutrell. So this is the fourth name for this one company that, of course, had various owners over the years. People would come in and go out and so forth. But it says it changed its name from Rocky Mount Dry Goods and moved to North Church Street Extension. Recently, it vacated a 5-story building on Nash Street that the firm built in 1932, which became a landmark simply because it was one of the 2 tallest buildings in the city. The owners today are Tom P. Harris, who came with the company in 1953, and J. Henry Cutrell, who started out with the firm in 1919 and was a traveling salesman. Cutrell well remembers the old days when a salesman stocked his large trunk with the myriad of products they sold, loaded it up on the coastline or in the old Model T, and took his heavy burden of samples to the small towns and country crossroads to serve the small stores of those days. Today, Harris Cutrell distributes only Hanes products, underwear primarily, and Converse, canvas, and waterproof sports and footwear. Modern trends have about eliminated the small country stores and replaced them with large city located stores and retailing chains. In the old days, the firm serviced stores west to Zebulon, south to Fayetteville, north to Roanoke Rapids, and east to the coast. Today, Harris Cusel serves stores in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, and expects to do a $2 million business in 1972. Now, there's right much more to this article, but it talks a little bit about, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says the firm was begun in 1912 as Alcoke, Little, and Henry by founder N.L. Alcoke and located on Sunset Avenue. About 1918, the firm became Alcoke Henry Incorporated and was located on Northeast Main Street and then Nash Street. In 1932, the company became Merchants Notion Company, located in its new 5-story building. J.D. Blunt was president. In 1948, the firm changed its name to Rocky Mount Dry Goods, and it remained in business in that name until this year. And again, it's from 1971. On October 28, the firm became Harris Cusel Incorporated and relocated at 1713 North Church Street in the building formerly occupied by Metal Products Incorporated. Since when the firm became Rocky Mount Dry Goods in 1948, stockholders were President J.D. Blunt, Mrs. H.T. Kill, Mrs. Frances Jolly, and J.H. Cusel Jr. Cusel became the president in 1953, the year after Blunt died, and his stock went with the estate. So, as you see, this business has gone through a myriad of transitions over the years and continue to grow and manifest itself with different products and different offerings. Let's fast forward a little bit now, Lee, to 1975. And I started doing a little more research on Mr. Bynum himself because I was curious about how he all came into this picture. And like so many business leaders in Rocky Mount throughout the years, Lionel Bynum's name appeared in so many countless articles. When I did a search, I was just amazed at how many things he was involved with, much like some of the other people we've talked about in recent shows who just seem to have time to invest themselves in just a dozen or more different boards and so forth. In 1975, the Rocky Mount Chamber of Commerce's 1975 officers were installed at the Chamber's 71st annual meeting. They are left to right. Sitting, Charles T. Lane, President, James B. Powers, Financial Vice President, and President-elect Bill Lane, outgoing President. Oh, Bill Lane was the outgoing President. Okay, standing, left to right, Lionel Bynum, Administrative Vice President, George Moore, Communications Vice President, and Theo Pitt, Program Vice President. So already Lionel Bynum is becoming a well-positioned, very well respected and admired businessman in Rocky Mount and becoming involved in so many different types of operations. He was on board of directors at different banks and different organizations. He was very active in civic means and capabilities over there in Rocky Mount, fundraisers and et cetera. So he just, was, like I said before, one of these people who just seemed to find time to involve themselves in so many really, really worthwhile causes. And you got to respect someone like that. I mean, the man could have been justified and saying, look, I'm a busy man, I'm running this business, I've got no time for anything else, don't bother me, go ask someone else to help you with this project. But he didn't do that. If he was asked to participate, he did. When he was asked to become part of a new board of directors or whatever, he accepted the challenge, if you will. And it's impressive to see someone with that kind of civic mindedness and community spirit, and certainly Lionel Bynum had that. As I said, I worked under him. He was not my direct boss, but I certainly knew who he was, and I had nothing but respect for the man when I knew him. And to this day, that respect remains. Item number 11, if you would, Lee, is from 1977, and this was a neat little feature story here the Telegram did. This article appeared and this picture appeared in 1977 in the Rocky Mount Telegram, but it says the picture was taken in 1975, and I'll read the caption here. It says, "It works now. This photo of Lionel Bynum beside a solar heating collecting panel was taken in October 1975 while the unit was still in the experimental stage. But now the system works well enough to save 60% on the company gas bill. And there was a neat article that went along with this picture, and it told about how he had gone through several trial and error of developing and trying different things to get this system to work. Some were successful, others not so much. But in time, he got this solar-powered hot water system working to the point that he could literally cut his gas back 60-some% or more, and save all kinds of money in doing so. So anyway, I tell you what, Lee, I just realized we're at another commercial break time, so bring it back to me. Folks, we got a few more pictures to share with you, a little more to talk about Mr. Lionel Bynum, and to show you some more pictures of downtown Rocky Mount. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And we're back. Before the break, we were talking about the several years progression of companies that occupied the building at 131 Nash Street, including Alcoke and Henry, and then Merchants and Ocean. In later years, it became Rocky Mount Dry Goods, and then, of course, it was Harris Cuthrell. And woven amongst all those transitions, Mr. Lionel Bynum's name surfaced when I was doing my research, and so that's why I thought it would be neat to kind of take a look at his successes in Rocky Mount and the way all this tied together. I mentioned before the break too that Mr. Bynum was another one of these gentlemen that when asked to participate in a project or invited to become involved in something, he would readily accept the challenge, and he was because of that, they knew he was someone they could count on, and he got requested to be on a number of boards and committees and so forth. In 1980, September of 1980, Lee, item number 12, if you would, he was appointed, he was at that time, and I'll read a little bit of the caption here under this picture. It says, Lionel Bynum, president and owner of Standard Electric Company, has been appointed to the Nash Technical Institute Board of Trustees to fill the unexpired term of Frank G. Baldwin, who died last year. The appointment was made by the Nash County Commissioners, and the term expires June 30th, 1983. Bynum came to Rocky Mount in 1946 to join Standard Electric and subsequently acquired the business. He is also president of Appliance and Furniture Mart. He is currently director of the YMCA and a member of the Board of Managers of People's Bank. Since moving to Rocky Mount, Bynum has served on numerous civic committees and has been active in community affairs. Bynum and his wife, Ernestine, were the parents of two children, Harry, who was in business with his father, and Mrs. Nick Falk. Many of you may know Nick Falk, the local attorney, and I didn't. I know Mr. Falk too, and I did not know he was married to Lionel Bynum's daughter. And at one time, Nick Falk's law office was in Station Square Mall. I've not been down there in some time. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. But at that time, I was not in the building to go see him. I was just in the building and happened to see his law office in there. But anyway, Nick Falk is married to Lionel Bynum's daughter. Okay, so fast forward now to December 1981, and we're going to start tying all this together. Item number 13, if you would, Lee. This is an article that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, December 1931, and it says, 1 down, 2 to go for Central City Plan. The Redevelopment Commission yesterday unanimously approved Phase 1 of a redevelopment plan for Rocky Mount Central City area. The plan, which will be considered tonight for approval by the city's planning board, is a detailed outline centered around developer Lionel Bynum's proposed mini-mall, the Station Square Mall. Commission members approved the plan following a public hearing during which no remarks were heard. The Phase 1 area includes all of the block bound by Southwest Main, Coastline, South Church, and Nash Streets, and extends southwest block bound by Hammond Street. Currently, the largest land use category in the area, which covers 3.74 acres, is commercial. The second largest existing land use category is parking. So, Lionel Bynum approached the city of Rocky Mount in December of 1981 and said, hey, I'd like to redevelop this area down here, put it in a little mall area, and it had originally planned to be shops and stores, and possibly even some residential development could be there. And so the city approved that. It went up for a vote, and it was eventually approved. Item number 14, Lee, is a model, architectural model, of what Lionel Bynum envisioned Station Square Mall to actually look like in 1981. So in the caption reads, pictured above is a model of Lionel Bynum Station Square Mall, Phase 1 of a downtown redevelopment plan inclusive of Bynum's Mall, was approved by the city council yesterday. So in one meeting it went up for a vote, or went up for discussion, I guess, and apparently it was approved the same meeting. It was in December of 81. So with the city's blessing to go forward and move ahead with plans to develop Station Square Mall, there was one problem. It needed some parking, and the available parking area, the biggest available parking space, was occupied by this 5-story building that had been Alcoke and Henry, and had later been Merchants Notions, and then had been Rocky Mount Dry Goods. Well, you get the point. So this building had to go. So in May of 1983, Lee, if you would have put up item number 15, in May of 1983, demolition began on this building. And the caption reads, making room. Wrecking crews are taking down the old Belk Tyler warehouse. I forgot to mention that, by the way. After all the other businesses moved out, the last being Harris Cuthrell, Belk Tyler's used part of this building as storage for Belk Tyler merchandise. Well, in any case, Lionel Bynum acquired the property, and in 83, the building had to come down. So it says, the building is owned by Lionel Bynum, owner and designer of the mini mall. Nash Street is blocked above for safety as crews take down the building from behind, shown at the bottom. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but that's like a crane there with some kind of wrecking mechanism at the top of it, and they're destroying the building or demolishing it in May of 1983. In September of 83, Lee, item number 16, if you would, just another example of Mr. Lionel Bynum's civic mindedness. It says, Corporation and Industries, Ed Turnley, Director of Recreation for the City of Rocky Mount, proudly points out the goal of $20,000 that has been reached for the Down East Festival of the Arts to Representative of Corporation Industries. From left to right are Turnley, Mike Shalosky, JC Project Chairman, Arnold Lawing, Albert Laboratories, Gene Detman, Uptown Merchant Association, Joe Warner, WCEC Radio, William L. Ricks, Carolina Telephone, Lionel Bynum, Station Square, and Bill Body, Mama Jean's. So just one more example. And all these gentlemen, tip my hat to them all, because they were all obviously involved in a very worthwhile cause, the City of Rocky Mount, in the Recreation Department, and this Down East Festival of the Arts. Raised $20,000. I'm not sure over what kind of time frame, but anyway, kudos to those guys for a job well done. So in March of 1984, Station Square Mall officially opens. It had been 2 or 3 years in the works from the time Lionel got permission to develop this property to the time the old building was taken down. And so March of '84, it was officially open. So Lee, if you would, item number 17. And this is a neat picture because it shows two businesses that were initially in Station Square Mall. The one at the top is the Red Caboose, a children's clothing store. The shop is owned by Melinda Bynum. And then, of course, at the top there on the right-hand side, that's Mayor Fred Turnage cutting the ribbon. And then it says, that picture to the left of the down on the bottom is Melinda Bynum. Then the top picture is Fred Turnage cutting the ribbon at a Child's Place, which is another store that was there. I don't think either one of those are in Station Square Mall anymore. I think they were there for some time and moved elsewhere. But anyway, March of '84, it all came to fruition. Now, I mentioned also that Harris Cuthell was the last occupant of the 5-story building that was eventually torn down to make room for parking for Station Square Mall. Item number 18, if you would, Lee. This is in 1984, and this is the Harris Cuthell building that they moved into on North Church Street. Many of you remember this building. It's still out there today. But this was a brand new building. It doesn't say the address, it just says North Church Street. 1971 is when they moved in there. Let me correct myself there because this picture appeared in 1984, but they actually moved into the building in 1971, it says here. So, okay. All right. I've talked a little bit about the history of Harris Cuthell earlier and how that business came from the many previous businesses that had occupied 131 Nash Street. Standard Electric had its own long history, obviously, and so in 1985, Lee, item number 20, if you would, there was another company formed. Lionel Bynum, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, has announced the formation of Seco Enterprises, a Rocky Mount, item number 20, Lee, if you would. I'm sorry. You can skip over that one there. There you go. There we go. Rocky Mount-based holding company. Seco Enterprises operates 5 wholly owned companies: Standard Electric, an electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and mechanical contractor; Tharrington Industries, a manufacturer and distributor of agricultural curing and heating products; Standard Electronics, a sales and service company for commercial security systems; and Station Square Mall, a deluxe complex retail professional space in Uptown Rocky Mount. Bynum also announced the promotion of Harry L. Bynum to the position of president of Seco Enterprises. That's, of course, his son. Lewis Barnes was there when I was there working for Standard Electronics in the late 1980s. But again, Standard Electronics went through quite a transition, quite a growth spurt themselves. By 1980, Lee, item number 21, if you would, just one more example of and this picture's hard to see, I'm sure, with TV. It's kind of blurry when I'm holding my hand. Lionel Bynum of Rocky Mount, the chairman of Seco Enterprises, has been appointed by the Baptist State Convention to a 4-year term on the Board of Trustees of the Baptist Retirement Homes of North Carolina. Bynum, a member of First Baptist Church, is married to Ernestine Bynum. They have 2 children, blah, blah, blah. But again, just another example of his community involvement. And how he found time to do all this is a mystery to me. 1994, just 4 years later, item number 22, Lee, James B. Powers and Lionel Bynum retired from the board of directors of Centura Banks. So in addition to being involved in everything else, he was also on the board of directors of Centura Bank in 1994. 1998 is just a snapshot of the history of Standard Electric. Lee, item number 23. We're almost out of time, but just real quickly, organized in 1923 as an electrical contracting firm. In 24 came RO Purvis came to Standard Electric. 28 Frigidaire franchise was awarded to the company. 39 the plumbing and heating department added. 1962 Standard Electric was awarded a Carrier dealership. 68 Lionel Bynum became owner and president of the company. In 68 they added a burglar alarm division. 1974 they exceeded $2 million in sales. 1982 they acquired Tharrington Industries. This long and storied history with this company that well deserved the accolades. In 1999, Standard Electric celebrated their 75th year in business. And sadly, a few years after that, in June of 2002, Lionel Bynum passed away. He was 78 years old. And before we go, I got one more thing I want to show you. Item number, go ahead, Lee, and bounce through the next two, because, yeah, you can go through that one. And there's an obituary, and then one more. There you go. That's Stanley Electric's location now. They're out on Highway 97 near the Rocky Mount Wilson Airport out there. And lastly, real quick before we go, this last picture I found purely just stumbled across it. This is the home place of Dr. Thomas Suter, Tom Suter's dad, the sports figure from WRL-TV. This is the home on the corner of Church Street and Western Avenue opposite the First Baptist Church. This picture was taken somewhere around 1950, and shortly after this picture was taken, it was demolished. So the house is gone now, but this was the old home place. Originally it was known as the J.C. Wynn House, W-Y-N-N-E. And the Suters moved into it sometime after the Wynn family left it, and sometime after 1950 the home was demolished. Folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. We ran slam out of time. But Lee, bring it back to me if you would. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight and watching. We've covered a lot of ground real fast, I know, but I wanted to try to get all this tied together if I could. So thanks for bearing with me. Have a great week, folks. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you next week with more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.